Good morning, everyone. If you can hear me, type in good morning. Morning, Nav. Morning, Sonia. Hey, Alex. Oscar. Terrific. Nice to see you again. Stephen. I've got some returning students. Navdeep, good morning. Owen. Reese, Day, amazing. Hannah, hey, and also some new students I'm meeting. Ariana, Julia, good morning. It's a beautiful morning, actually, today. Alan, good morning. Nice to meet you. Ariana, good morning. Bonjour à toi aussi. My friends, here's what's on the menu for today. It's a bunch of stuff here. And before I do that, I just want to check, Marie, good morning. I want to check a few things with you just to make sure that we got everything settled out. First of all, can everyone see a little red dot on the screen right now? If you can see it, type in yes. All right, well, that little red dot, that's me. Or, I mean, it's not me, but I'm controlling the red dot. And so I'm going to be using that along with a bunch of other little tools. You as well today. I'll teach you how to use a few tools on the screen, actually. It's going to be really cool. Another thing I want to make sure that we figure out right at the beginning is the chat bar. Now, you've noticed that you can type in the chat bar. Like when I say good morning, it's a great time for us to get in touch. The chat bar is my only connection to you. All right, so one of the things I've done with how I've designed this course is I want to keep it so that we're focused really on the ideas, not the persons. I would be super self-aware if you could see my home. I think you would be super self-aware if I could see your home or your hairdo or my hairdo. Like, let's not look at each other's haircuts, all right? This is COVID. Let's all have a bit of leniency here. That said, I want to cut down on the bandwidth. I really want to make things simple. So what we're going to have is the format that we have right now. And the chat bar, though, is my only connection to you. So we have to use it well. The chat bar is my way of figuring out whether you're lost or whether you're following along. It's my way for me to ask questions and to get you involved and to do some exercises. All right. One of the things, though, with the chat bar that I've been told is that when students are typing in the chat bar, like a moment ago, you just typed in yes, that's just 3 letters. But when students are typing in the chat bar, you can see if someone's typing, it says, you know, so-and-so is currently typing in the chat bar, which I take it as a cue to kind of stop maybe and listen because someone's about to ask a question. But I've been told that the audio sometimes cuts off when that happens. So I don't know how's the connection on your end, the connection on my end, but I want to make sure that we really have a good, strong connection. So if you have to type in the chat bar, if it's anything more involved than a simple answer, like often I'll tell you, answer yes or no, or if it's clear, please say clear or tell me what your question is. But if it's anything more involved than a complicated, like it's a complicated question that has several words in it, please open up a text file or a Word file or some separate Word document. Start typing in your question on that separate file. And then when you're ready, it also gives you a good opportunity to proof it to make sure it's precise and that you're not having full of typos, because then otherwise I'll ask you what you meant and then we'll go back and forth needlessly. And then you can copy paste that into the chat bar and then click send. Press the little arrow, the little chevron on the right. And then that way, what you're going to be able to do is formulate your question without necessarily taking up the chat bar space and cutting off the audio. Remember also that everything's recorded. So the moment I say hello to you, everything's being recorded, which is a really, really cool feature of this format. This is something that we couldn't have done in class. I suppose we could have done it, but that would have meant recording everything, and I'm not super comfortable about doing that. But it's a really, really neat thing. So if you ever miss anything, you can go back. But even if it chops, I think the recording also would pick up on the chopping. So let's use that chat bar really well. I'd rather that you really focus just on the course content. It's not just a place to goof around. And so if you have something to say, make sure that it's of benefit to everyone. Don't post links in there. That would be inappropriate. Really, let's just keep our focus on the course content. That said, if you're ever in doubt and you have a question and you're lost or you're confused about something, please let me know. All right, because one of the things I don't want to do is have you be silent, but then confused and lost, and we keep going on. And I could have rectified it. It could have taken me just 30 seconds to explain something. You'd be back on track. So if you are confused about anything, just let me know. The worst that's going to happen is I'll say, oh, I can't go into that. That's too big of a question. Or let me keep that for the end of the class. Or, you know, this is something, I'll just direct you somewhere and you can have a look at something and that's it. And so if in doubt, please ask. I'm there to answer your questions. This is a live class, right? So it's take full advantage of it. In that same spirit also, the logistics of this are really important. Like I'm looking around my office right now. I'm sitting comfortably in a chair. I've got a breakfast with me. I'm eating breakfast. I've got like 2 large containers of water, some protein shake, an espresso shot, some watermelon, some egg whites, some oatmeal with some almonds and some hemp seeds, and like all sorts of healthy stuff. I've got a nice window that's open so I get some air circulation. Do what you got to do to make sure that you're alert. All right. This isn't TV. This is the thing that's really messed up. I'm using the same computer screen that I watch, like, you know, Disney movies with my kids on. So it's very confusing for me, but you have to have a kind of a distinction there. This is not TV. This is where you need to bring it. This is where you can't be passive. You have to be active. And one way of making sure that the lights are on in your brain is to really make sure you're well hydrated, you're well fed, and you're drinking coffee and you're alert. So make me part of your breakfast routine. So how about every Thursday we have breakfast together? Right? So I'm making you part of my breakfast routine. So have breakfast. And you'll notice also when I ask you questions, it's a nice excuse for me to eat. Like right now, I'm looking at my oatmeal, or it's looking at me. And it's like, take a bite from me, Mark. You need to fuel up. So when I ask you a question, often it's a great chance for me to have a bite without being too impolite. Is that clear, everyone? Does that sound like a nice working strategy? If it's clear, type in clear. If not, ask a question. I'm going to have myself a bite of oatmeal. Man. You know, when you're hungry, like even oatmeal is good. If I was in class, by the way, students have taken live classes with me. You know I'd eat in your face, right? You know I would eat in class, right? Julia has taken courses with me. Some of you people have taken courses with me live. Like, the important thing to me is not so much being polite, it's like being alert. Like, I want to be sharp, you know? And I get dumb really quick. Speaking of being dumb, I can only be smart for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. All right. So the class starts at 10 a.m. sharp, but like at 12:15, I'm calling it. Right. No matter what happens. So, because beyond that, I'm just going to get like really stupid. So I don't have a set time for the class. It's really hard for me to conceive that the class would last less than an hour and 30 minutes. I think, like, if we're going to meet, let's make it worth our while. We meet only once a week, and we got lots of really cool things to discuss. So imagine the class bracket being between, let's say, an hour and a half to 2 hours and 15 minutes. Today, for sure, 2 hours and 15 minutes, because we got lots on our plate. Why do we have lots on our plate? Well, because the first item on our menu here, let's look at our main document. That's going to take a while. The first order of business, before we jump into content, because you'll see here, we're going to ask who's Peirce and why should you care? I mean, that's the first order of business, you could argue. But even before that, you folks are undergraduate students. You're concerned about your grades. And the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about how you'll be evaluated, how we're going to spend our time together. And all that's laid out in our main document, what you might call our syllabus or our course description. It goes by different names. I like to call it our main document because that really captures what it is. That main document that we'll be looking at is available on the top of our Moodle page. We're going to read the essential parts of it together today, and I'm going to answer all of your questions. So the first thing I want to do today is make sure that everyone has a clear sense, as clear as one can reasonably be, you know, because some of these things, again, get clearer as the semester unfolds. But as clear as one can reasonably be about what the expectations are. What's the workload going to look like? What is our week-by-week breakdown going to look like? What's our semester going to look like? And then once everyone's satisfied and we've done that, then we're going to move on to the next item on our list, which is, who the heck is this Peirce guy and why should anybody care, right? That's the second thing we're going to be doing. This is an introductory course in a way, and in a way it isn't. I'm assuming you've taken some philosophy before. If you take this course, you're required to have taken at least one philosophy course before. In fact, this is a good time for me to check in with you and see. Could you please type in the chat bar the number of philosophy courses you've taken here, IIKPU or elsewhere? Oh, cool. All right. Nice variety. Okay. It seems to be growing. The first persons were like 1-1 because it's easier to type, I suppose, and it keeps growing. So you see, you're a very, very diverse bunch. I'm not quite sure. So I tell you what I'm going to do? I'm always going to assume that you've never taken any philosophy or almost none, right? So because I can't even tell those who've taken one course which course you've taken, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume nothing, right? So for those of you who know more, it'll be like, oh, okay, that's a nice kind of recap of what I already know. So my assumption throughout this entire course is that it's not an introductory course in the sense that at least one thing I want to get out of the way. This is what I'm hoping that everyone has in common. So despite all of the variety and the different people that have different profiles, can we all agree that philosophy is not an easy subject matter? Can we all agree on that? If you agree, type in agree. Like it's a serious subject matter, like you've been broken in. All right, cool. All right, good. Then we're good. You know, that's already way better than when I teach my introduction to philosophy class. You know, you folks, you're a different breed now because you've decided to go for seconds. You know, you're double dipping now. You've already taken at least one philosophy class. You had the rude awakening when you took your first philosophy class, didn't you? That this was like way harder than you thought, right? Because students, there's this urban myth out there that what we're going to do together is just like smoke cannabis and beat drums. Like, you know, I don't know what people think philosophy is, but like, it's not what people think. It's actually really rigorous and hard and challenging. It's arguably one of the most difficult humanities subjects you could ever study. Arguably, perhaps even one of the most difficult subjects you could study, but certainly one of the most difficult humanities. And so at least we got that in common. So I can assume that. So the level of maturity that I'm going to be expecting from you, though, is going to be a little higher. I'm not going to treat you like you ain't kids. This is university. So I'm assuming you love stuff. Right? You love philosophy. Owen writes, philosophy's made me a better critical thinker for my business degree. And indeed, it makes you a better everything for everything, right? And so it's a really, really worthwhile subject matter. And not only am I passionate about philosophy, I love Peirce. Peirce is my friend, all right? So I'm going to introduce you to my friend. So you have to understand, this course means a lot to me. You know, this is great 20th century philosophers. It focuses on one philosopher. And obviously I chose Peirce, right? This is a labor of love. So this is going to mean a lot to me. I'm going to ask a lot of you, but we're also going to get a lot out of it, all right? So that's what I'm going to assume from you. So I'm not going to assume anything as far as knowledge. We'll assume an introductory level of knowledge, but I'll assume a greater than average level of commitment and maturity to philosophy as a subject matter. Does that make sense, everyone? If that makes sense, write clear. If you're not clear about what I'm saying, like, let me know I'm crazy. Gonna have some eggs. Oh, terrific. All right. So that's the spirit in which I'm approaching you people, because I know a lot of you, but I don't know a lot of other people too. I'm gonna get to know you. And you know that also one of my goals when I teach is to groom you for being my subsequent students again, because I love having repeat students who know how I work and who know how I like to have fun, but I also like to keep the content legit, like it's serious, right? So that's what we're going to be doing first. So who is Peirce, right? And why should anybody care? Why should you care is an important part as well. You can't just assume the authority of like what's in it for you, right? Then we're going to do a big overview. We're going to zoom out. So the first half, maybe hopefully just 1/3 of the class, the first third, look at our main document, and then the remainder of the class on this, right? And the big overview is, I want to zoom out and I want to get across some core ideas, right? What I call keystone ideas. A keystone is the stone that holds together an edifice, like if you have a building, for instance, right? An arch or a church or something like that, and you have with one stone that holds together the others. There's a few ideas in Peirce that I think are really key to his thought. And in order to get there, I'm going to do some exercises with you, right? And the first thing I'm going to do is just going to give you a very, very low resolution sketch of where his ideas fit in the history of philosophy. I'm going to use some major players in philosophy. I'm just going to put him in relation to them. We're talking about great 20th century philosophers. He's a great philosopher in general throughout the entire history of philosophy. So I'm going to compare him to some major heavy hitters that you may have heard of. And then I'm just going to situate him. And that's an idea that we'll get to revisit. His position relative to those other thinkers is something we'll get to revisit briefly, although we're mainly going to be concerned with Peirce, not so much comparing him to others. Then we're going to do some exercises together. And when I mean exercises, it'll be like really experiments. We're going to run some experiments together. One of them is going to be an a posteriori exercise, the other a priori. These are Latin words. A posteriori means the kind of inquiry that the results of which you can't anticipate while sitting in your armchair. And a priori would be the kind of thing, the results of which you could anticipate from sitting in your armchair. So one of the exercises here is going to be inspired by astronomy, and the other is going to be inspired by mathematics. And we're going to do that exercise together. And the point of that exercise will be to really get involved and as you can draw the conclusions on your own, there are going to be some general ideas that we can extract from that are really going to capture the essence of Peirce's approach to philosophy in general. And once we've gleaned those, and I'll summarize them in 3 points, there'll be 3 keystone ideas. And what we'll do is we'll glance at this week's reading. So this week's reading is going to be what I call a Peirce packet. So Peirce has a huge amount of writings, and every week I'm going to be giving you what I call Peirce packets, which are little bundles where I've assembled. I mean, they're not so much readings because I didn't even pull them out in integral pieces. I have kind of put them together thematically to maximize intelligibility and to really get to the essence of things, these little Peirce packets. And we're going to go over our first Peirce packet together, and your reading for the week will be to go over it more carefully. So we're going to have at least one go together in class today, and that will wrap up our class. All right, so that's how we're going to spend the next 2 hours. It's currently 10:15, so the next 2 hours. Does that sound good? If everyone's good to go, type in good to go. If you got a question, excuse me, type your question. Good to go? Good to go. Good. Because remember, I can't see your faces. How are his readings difficultly wise? I'm not sure what that means, but you'll see. Oh, difficulty wise. Oh, really, really difficult, Andrew. Pretty difficult. Yeah, and in general, he's a difficult thinker. So, but difficult and in a strange way clear. It depends on what we mean by difficulty. It really depends. You'll see, Andrew. Tough though, but really, really worthwhile. Yeah. Yeah. And you definitely. I'll say this, Andrew. Okay, Andrew, I will tell you this. There's no way you can just show up and start reading Peirce on your own. You need help for Peirce. Peirce is one of those philosophers. You know how you can, I suppose, pick up a copy of, I don't know, would Wittgenstein be able to, could you read Nietzsche, let's say? You could kind of read Nietzsche on your own, right? They sell Nietzsche at Indigo and chapters and Amazon, right? You can go grab yourself on a bookshelf, you know, a Nietzsche and start reading. He's not an easy thinker. He's deceptively, he writes beautifully, but you can read him on your own. Peirce, you need a university course for. You can't just show up and start reading Peirce. It'll go way, way, way over your head. So you absolutely need a course like this. The cool thing is, this is offered at the undergraduate level right now. Most of the times people encounter Peirce at the graduate level. So you definitely need a course on him. Kind of like Kant. You don't just show up and start reading Kant. I had a girlfriend once. She just showed up at a bookstore. And she bought Kant's Critique of Pure Reason and just like opened it as you would a regular book. You know, you open the cover and you start reading, like if it was a Harry Potter book, like page 1, right? And she couldn't make it to like page 2, right? It's like, of course not. You don't just show up and read Kant. You need to take university courses on it. It's the same thing with Peirce. Andrew, does that make a little more sense? I think that's probably a better answer to your question. Yeah. So you need me on this one, really. But the cool thing is that in 13 weeks, you'll be equipped. You'll have a starter kit. You can do it on your own after. The trick is to get you to fly on your own wings. Yeah. All right. So let's look at our main document. Everyone's good to go. This document here that I'm looking at, this is a PDF file. That's available on Moodle at the very top. I'm going to start almost every class looking at it because I think it's a really important document, especially the week-by-week breakdown. Today, we're going to look at all of the essential parts. I strongly recommend, in fact, require you to download a copy of that PDF and to keep it on your computer somewhere so you can see it offline. If ever, for whatever reason, your computer, your internet crashes, I need you to be able to refer to this so that you stay on track and not be completely lost. Moreover, you might even want to print this out on paper and have it nearby. This is the blueprint of how we're going to spend our time, all right? So here we are, great philosophers of the 20th century, right? So here's my email if you're looking for it. It's also available on pretty much anywhere. Remember also that I'm not holding office hours, so if you have a question, you can email me. But one of the things about emails is I would much rather that you ask me in class if you have a question. So try to keep emails as being the last resort. One of the reasons for that is if I answer you by email, you get the benefit, but no one else does. Whereas if you ask me a question in class, everyone's going to benefit. Moreover, I can't spend my time, writing emails. It's just going to kill me. It's already bad enough as it is. So anything anyone can do to cut down on my inbox size is truly welcome. I'm the chair of the philosophy department. I write books. I teach a lot of courses. I got 4 kids. It's like, yeah, it's a busy life. Please, 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 if you can, talk to me during our breakfast sessions every Thursday. All right. So try to avoid emails. If you have to write me an email, that's cool. I mean, I'm there for you. My door's open. I'm genuinely happy to help you. But I'll say some more about email etiquette. But in general, try to take advantage of now. Right. Also for office hours are after this class. I'm always going to be the last one to leave this big blue button room. So I say goodbye to people individually, the same way I said hello to everyone individually. If you need to talk to me, just let me know as we're saying our goodbyes. Mark, can I talk to you? And then I'll say, sure, no problem. And you just tell me that in the chat bar, and you stick around. And then when people have left the room, then I give you whatever remaining brain power I have left, with the understanding that I'm not going to be the sharpest tool in the shed after having taught, but still pretty formidable, even in my worst shape. All right. And then I'll give you whatever I got. So that's for office hours. And I'm there to help you. All right. So here's the course description. I could have made this one complicated, but I kept it really, really short this time because there's not much I can say beyond this. This upper level course will introduce students to the systematic ideas of Charles Sanders' Peirce. Yes, it is pronounced Peirce, like someone stole my purse or I hid my makeup in my purse, right? It's not Peirce. So the first telltale sign that someone doesn't know what they're talking about when they talk about Peirce is that they say Peirce. It's Peirce. And of course, you can never deduce the sound from the spelling, which just goes to show that it's a telltale sign of whether or not you've been properly schooled on the subject. By the way, some other thinkers are like that. Like, if you do early modern philosophy, it's Bishop Barclay. It's not Berkeley, it's Barclay. So if you've actually taken a course in early modern philosophy, you'll know it's Barclay, not Berkeley. And if your prof said Berkeley, then your prof also doesn't have the proper training, right? So it's Peirce. And I say here, systematic ideas. You'll see how everything is going to hang together. Although we're going to look at things in different parts and go systematically throughout, like piece by piece throughout the semester, we'll keep referring back from different angles to the same ideas over and over again, including the three that we'll look at today, right? And he is not just one of the greatest philosophers of the 20th century, but one of the greatest philosophers who ever lived, right? I would put him in my top 5. I think anyone in their right mind who knew about the history of philosophy should put them in their top 10 at least. He's an insanely important philosopher. Although, what counts as an insanely important philosopher depends, right? The overarching hope is that by rigorously engaging with Peirce's main contributions to different branches of philosophy, students will cultivate their intellectual skills as well as increase their knowledge of philosophy in general. Right. So remember, look at my goals here. They're threefold. I want us to engage with Peirce's main contributions to different branches. I want you to cultivate your intellectual skills. And I also want you to increase your knowledge of philosophy in general. So those are the 3 goals. So not only are we going to learn about Peirce, you're just going to get smarter, because that's always good, like train your brain. And you're also going to learn more about philosophy in general, because, I mean, he is a philosopher, and we're going to be looking at some very staple branches of philosophy, like epistemology and so on, right? Learning outcomes. This is written by the university, not me. It's a bunch of bullets here. You might want to read this some other time. 0 textbook cost. This course does not require you to purchase any textbook. Instead, materials will be made available as PDFs on Moodle. I will, as soon as the course is over, because I don't want people to be kind of sidetracked, I will make available all of Peirce's writings for you. At least everything I could get that's in a digital format. So for instance, the chronological edition and the writings, I don't know, for some reason, I think I can't get volume 1 as a PDF, but I can get volume 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 is not done. I used to work on that, volume 8. And so I'll make available all of that stuff. If some of you have browsed a little bit, you've seen that. That's been up for a few weeks, and I had, while the site was being constructed, it was visible for a moment. There's lots there, like a lot. What you're going to have in this course is the raw materials of everything that Peirce has written, and then the digested portions that are a product of my educational skills for you, where I will make these little Peirce packets for you weekly. That's going to make it manageable, because otherwise it's like trying to eat an elephant, like you can't. It's just too big. You got to chop it down into little bite-sized pieces. That's what I'm going to do for you, but there's no textbook cost. If you want to buy something, buy 2 books. You go on Amazon and buy 2 books. One of them is called The Essential Peirce, Volume 1. That was published in 1992 by Indiana University Press. And The Essential Peirce, Volume 2. Those 2 books are available on the Moodle page. So they're also available online. I've made the PDFs available. No worries, Sumdesh. It's cool. So the Essential Peirce Volume 1 and 2, there are only 2 volumes. So if you get Volume 1, you get Volume 2, you're good. You can have those 2, and they would be a really worthwhile investment. The people editing Peirce's writings realized at some point that they wouldn't be done within their lifetimes. So what they did to sort of make scholarship move forward was they decided to just grab a best of, if you will, and assemble them in 2 easy to get books. They're very, very, very difficult readings, but still, if you want to purchase a textbook or something that looks like a textbook, the Essential Peirce Volume 1 and Essential Peirce Volume 2 you might want to buy. That's a worthwhile investment. The rest are outside your price range. We're talking about books that would cost like $180 a pop, and you'd have to get like 30 of them. So it's not going to happen. All right, so online sessions, right? I'm not going to talk about this much more than just to say that, and I've said this before, my assumption is that you're self-motivated adults. All right, so that means I don't take attendance. Right? And it also means so online attendance will not be taken and participation will not be graded. You show up here because you realize that it's worthwhile. If I do my job right, that should be obvious. If you don't feel like it's worthwhile, don't show up. Like I don't just like, what does it add to me that you're here if you don't bring your intellect? What I want is not just your name in the chat bar. What I want is your intellect. I want you to bring your mind. I want you to bring the best part of you, the most alert part of you for 2 hours and 15 minutes every Thursday morning. If you do that, I'll do it too, you know, and then magic can happen. But no, you're not children, so I don't take attendance, all right? Likewise for breaks. If you need to go for a break and you get up, like Sumdesh said, oh, sorry, I'm back. Like, sorry, Sumdesh, but we didn't even notice, right? It's like if you were to get up and to go to the washroom, I mean, if I got up and went to the washroom, you know, no worries, man. We love you, Sumdesh, right? But it's, you know how it goes. If I vanish, you know, you'll notice, right? It doesn't go both ways. Unfortunately, it's a double standard. If I get up and just leave and go to the washroom, everyone's gonna be like, where'd the prof go? If you get up and go to the washroom, I won't find out, right? So you do you. But that said, come back as quick as you can, right? Take advantage. Remember, everything's recorded, so that couple minutes that you'll have missed, not the end of the world. You can watch the rerun, right? All right. So detailed summary of evaluation scheme. This is how you're going to be graded. It's going to be really straightforward. You're going to get a certain part of marks for what are called journal entries. You're going to have some quizzes and some on logic, and then 2 exams, one at the middle and one at the end. Let me go over those very carefully. Let's start with the entries. You're going to have 6 entries worth 5% each. 6 times 5 makes 30%. They will be held on the following dates. I tried to spread them out throughout the semester. There's some rationale to that. I want to spread out the workload. You're going to have one due next week. So May 20th is our next class. We are currently May 13th, so in 7 days. You owe me an entry before the start of next class. And when I mean before the start of the next class, I don't mean like Thursday morning. Like at some time this week, right? You owe me an entry. So you've got 1 week to write your entry. And then those will be spread out. We'll see them in the week-by-week breakdown. What are the journal entries? Well, if you see here, there's a little star. You refer yourself down here, journal entries. And the intent behind the journal entries is as follows. If you come out of a course exactly the same way that you came in, then the intervening period was essentially a waste of time. Like, think about it. Why do we read? We don't just read to hurt our eyeballs while staring at something. We read because we want to learn. And to learn is to change. So it stands to reason then that when you learn, you abandon and or revise some of your beliefs in a minor or major way. It doesn't always have to be a life-changing thing. Sometimes it can be like a little adjustment. Hence, throughout the term, students will compile a reflective journal. You will be given a workable Word template and examples showing exactly what is expected. All right, so let me look at that right away. So if you go on Moodle, for instance, you'll see a section that says journal entries. Underneath there, you'll see it says entry template to fill, and then you'll have a PDF that says entries to emulate, entries to avoid. Let me look at the entry template to fill. It looks like this. So what I'm looking at right now is a PDF. But what you'll have is a Word file, a workable Word file, one that you can type in. You can download fresh copies of that throughout the semester whenever you need it, right? And it's pre-done for you. You don't have to worry about what it looks like. This is what it's going to look like. At the very top here, it says replace with your full name. So you type in your full name. Replace with your KPU ID number. This is to allow me to retrace you, to find out who did what, so I can give you proper credit. Entry number what? Well, if it's your first entry, then you write entry number 1 here. You replace that with a number. And the entry itself is going to have 3 paragraphs. 1, 2, 3. Only 3 paragraphs. All right, so 1, 2, and 3. Not 4 paragraphs, not 2, right? 3. The first paragraph is going to start with the following sentence. This reading definitely made me think. You see, I used to believe that, and then you finish this paragraph. What are you going to finish it with? I don't know. I mean, it's a sentence completion exercise, right? If you're going to change your mind about something, there has to be a starting position. So you used to believe something. Certainly, there's a bunch of stuff that you currently think. It ain't all true, but you believe it. And so you got to start there, right? So tell me what you used to think. That's paragraph 1. So you complete this sentence clearly. And you don't ramble about your life. I want to hear about your ideas, right? Second paragraph starts with, contrary to this older belief, I now believe that, and then you finish this paragraph in a way that contrasts with the previous paragraph. So the beliefs that you hold now, right, are different from the ones that you used to believe. And they're not just different, but they're supposedly better, right? So a paragraph 3, you're going to say, the reasons why I changed my mind is that, and now you're going to explain to me why they're better. And so you're going to finish this paragraph in a way that justifies why the change of mind track by the previous 2 paragraphs is an improvement. I don't just want you to be changed by a reading. I want it to be a better you on the other side of that reading. In other words, argue by giving reasons. So imagine this is a timeline, right? And this is you right now. This is you at time T1. This is you today, let's say, right? You came into this class at 10 a.m. Here you are. And you come in and you're not a blank slate. You believe certain things, you've heard certain things, you form certain opinions and stuff. Here you are. And I'm going to put in your path, I'm going to put before you in your stream of consciousness, a reading, right? And a class. It'll be a class and a reading, let's say, right? Both work kind of well together. The class and the reading are there. And here you are, you're currently on the timeline experiencing that class as it unfolds. We're going to do the reading together at the end a little bit, and you're going to read it some more this week. On the other side of that is a new you. You at time T2, right? Whenever that's going to be, sometime in 6 or 5 days or whatever, right? When everything's going to be kind of sunken in. And presumably this journey altered you in some way, because why else would we do this? You know, seriously, like if the you at time T2 is exactly identical to the you at time T1, what the heck did you pay tuition for? Like, what are you doing with your life, right? What are you doing with your life, right? And so if anyone understood that reference, I'll be impressed. So what we want to do is we want to alter ourselves by reading, by engaging with philosophical ideas, right? And so paragraph 3 is going to be over here. Paragraph 3 is going to tell me why this constituted an improvement. So paragraph 1 is telling me where you were. Paragraph 2 is telling you where you're at now. And then paragraph 3 is going to tell me essentially the following. Anyone, not just me, anyone who would be in this position, number 1, right, would prefer, or it'd be preferable for them to be in position number 2, that irrespective of your little particularities, because it's not, I don't care about your opinions, right? The beliefs held at state 2 are preferable to the beliefs held at state 1, right? And paragraph 3 is going to lay that out. And by arguing and giving reasons. So this is not a journal entry that has to do with you. Right? It has to do with you in some sense, because the position occupied at 1, that has to do with your own intellectual trajectory. But it's one where anyone who would be in that position, right, it'd be preferable for them to be in position number 2. Now, what exactly does that mean? It can mean a bunch of things, and that's for you to figure out, right? Depending on the readings. Arjun, you're typing something. Finish what you have to say. Yeah, and remember, Arjun, what I said about complicated stuff, just type them in a second thing and then paste them in so as to hopefully didn't chop or anything. So in case the new information reinforces a previously held belief, what is the course of action? You haven't learned anything new, but the info was still important. Yeah, that could happen, right? So one of the things is, if, let's say, you always thought something, but you thought it without really examining that. You only had basically a gut feeling or an intuition, or you had read it, but you hadn't thought about it deeply. You know, like you had given it maybe 3 hours of thought, But now you've given it like a full week and you've studied it and it ends up confirming what you already thought. What I want you to do is you can report on that as well, right? And you, what you have to say then is you have to kind of show me how you've got a firmer basis, lay out the reasons now that you didn't have before for why that ended up being right. So for instance, here's a classic case, Arjun. We're all in many ways realists, right? I think most of us, I think it's kind of a common sense thing that we go around and we act in the world and we think that the things we interact with are really there and that the people we talk to are really there. And in some very loose folk way, we're all kind of philosophical realists, right? But it's one thing to sort of do that in an unexamined way, and quite another to have shopped around, taken it apart, put it back together, and yet nevertheless end up, still being, let's say, a realist, quote unquote. And that's an unfortunate label because it means so many things in different debates. So I'm not even going to begin to go there. But it's quite another thing to then come on the other side of that and realize, wow, it turns out I was right all along. But now I'm right in a way that I can actually provide reasons for, not just gut feelings for. Do you see that difference, Arjun? And then you give me those reasons. Right? You spell those out. Yeah, terrific. Now, you want to also stay open to the possibility that you might actually genuinely change your mind about something too. Yeah, I mean, both possibilities are there. And you don't want to prejudge in advance where things are going to go. The whole point of a genuine inquiry, and we'll see this throughout the term, at stage number 1 here, is that you don't know where you're going to be at stage number 3, but you stand at stage number 2, but you stand ready to move. Right? You stand ready to let the course of the deliberation take you where the deliberation is taking you. Otherwise, you're just begging the question. You're just assuming the thing you're trying to prove, and you're not actually thinking. What you're doing is you're rationalizing your beliefs. You're not actually being rational. There's a difference between rationalizing and being rational. And we philosophers, we're trying to be rational. We're not just trying to rationalize what we already think, right? So you have to stand ready to revise, but sometimes some beliefs survive subjecting them to scrutiny. And that's also an improvement, right? Like the difference between, me and my kids when we say like we're both happy and we both feel like we're entitled to be happy is I can give you a lengthy justification for why philosophically I think I'm entitled to be happy, where my kids are just happy, right? Like that's the difference, right? I can reflect on that state. I can also put myself back in that childlike state and just enjoy the moment, but I can also I've earned that moment because I can do the lengthy detour to say, or here are some potential problems with that, but nevertheless, I end up being back in the starting position. Yeah, good question, Arjun. But also notice that you need to stand ready to change your mind. And if that never happens, then you also need to think about whether or not you're being honest with yourself and if you're actually carrying a genuine inquiry, right? And sometimes it can also be like you used to be, and yeah, and here's another possibility that might happen. Sometimes it's like this. You used to be super clear about something. So that's what I'm going to put over here. I used to be super clear about something, right? Let me put this here. I used to be super clear about something, and now I'm not. And that's an improvement because I shouldn't have been super clear. I was too clear. I actually realized the situation is way more complex than I initially thought. That could be what you report on. Conversely, it could be as follows. It could be, I used to be unclear about something, and now I'm clear about something. This clarified it for me. That could be a thing too, right? Sometimes it's an improvement to go from clarity to unclarity, and sometimes it's an improvement to go from unclarity to clarity, as the case may be. You want to actually just, track that, and that's really difficult exercise. So this entry I'm asking of you, this is going to be hard. If you take this seriously, it forces you to be accountable publicly for your thought processes. Right? And that's going to be a really good thing. Ariana's typing a question. I'm going to have a bite. And I'm going to see what she has to say. And now, while Ariana's typing, this entry is also a way to be publicly accountable. Like when you read and you think privately, right, in the privacy of your own mind, I'll read your question in just a second. In the privacy of your own mind, you could be holding falsehoods. You could be saying lies. You could be committing contradictions, right? You could be contradicting yourself, and you could be massively unclear and imprecise. Those are all things which, if you were to put them in a public sphere, not just in the privacy of your own mind, would be things to be ashamed of. So for instance, saying falsehoods in public, that's blameworthy. Like, we shouldn't be saying falsehoods. Likewise, committing contradictions, contradicting yourself. If you contradict yourself in public, you should be ashamed of yourself, right? We don't think that's a good thing. Likewise, if you're imprecise and unclear in public, that's not a virtue. That's actually a vice. And so all of these things which are vices and blameworthy and things to be avoided in a public sphere, you can get away with privately in your own mind. So when you write an entry, it's a public act, because I'll read it. Right? So it holds you accountable to a higher standard. It makes you think better, right? Because you know that I will read this, and I will read it in a way that refuses falsehoods, that doesn't tolerate, bad language that's really imprecise, and that doesn't let you get away with contradicting yourself, right? Ariana writes, one of your rules in your previous class was to always be open to objection. Ariana, that's exactly where I got it. Right? Just changed a lot of my perspective on life. That's right, Ariana. And this is the course where we're going to go under the hood, and we're going to find out why I put that rule in the mix. So Ariana, today in this class, you're going to find out why that was such an important rule, right? To stand ready to open our minds and to always consider objections. Peirce is where I got all that, essentially. He's like, he makes that the core of his philosophy. Yeah. It's exactly right. All right, so there's a bunch of instructions here underneath, but before I go for those instructions, is this reasonably clear? Is this clear? If it's clear, type in clear, or if you got a question, ask your question. And if you've taken courses with me, I use this a lot. This is a really cool device, right? All right, good. And then there's a bunch of instructions. I'll just read them because I want to go quickly here. Your finished entry should delete the red sentence completion parts and these gray instructions. Once you are done, select your whole text and put it in black. Your total journal entry must fit on this side of this page, single-spaced, like the template above. There is no maximum or minimum number of words. That said, an entry that is too short risks being insufficiently justified, whereas an entry that is too long probably veers off topic and rambles. Do not include any quotes, citations, links, or references of any kind. So you're going to have access to a lot of Peirce documents. Don't quote Peirce. I want to hear from you. Each entry is worth 5%. 1% will be removed every time one of the following criteria is not met. The journal entry connects in a clear way with the week's reading. The journal entry follows the required structure, 3 paragraphs, starting with those sentences, not 4 paragraphs and not sentences you make up. The writing is clear and free of grammatical and spelling errors. Assessments of which views are better are argued for using impersonal and persuasive reasons. Impersonal means it doesn't have to do just with you. I don't care what your beliefs are in that sense. Justifications are given throughout, and they are free of fallacies and or falsehoods. Fallacies are just logical mistakes. Falsehoods are things that are just not true. The entry as a whole is well developed and considers relevant objections. So if there are objections that came up in class, you got to mention those, right? Because if you don't, I will. Take the time to carefully reread and edit what you have written. For everything you write, I will ask, what does that even mean? And why should anyone agree? So no word salads and no personal reports on your personal convictions, because anyone has to agree and it has to be clear. So no word salads or buzzwords. No jargon either, if you can avoid it. I will post your entry results on Moodle, occasionally with some brief comments in the feedback box, generally letting you know how you got your results. So if I trimmed off some points, I'll tell you why I trimmed them off, what the mistakes were. Make a PDF copy of your text on your computer, then use that PDF for the upload. You will find specific spots on Moodle where you can upload each entry. As soon as this class is over, you'll see the spot for the first entry. Only PDFs will be accepted. Plagiarism detection software will be used. Plagiarism of any sort gets a student expelled from KPU. Please do not plagiarize. I'll kick you out of school. I did it twice last semester. It sucks. It's paperwork and people cry. Late or emailed entries get 0%. So you email me, you get 0. I don't care what the story is. You get 0. No excuses. All right. So those are the instructions for that. Are there any questions about this? If you have any questions, write your questions. If everything's clear, tell me clear. Good. If you have questions, don't feel bad. I just ask. I'm happy to answer because other students will be like, yeah, I'm glad they asked, right? All right. You write me 6 entries. 6 times 5, 30%. We're going to do some logic in this course. It's going to be Peirce's specific logic, right? Peirce did a lot of contributions to logic. We're going to learn a system of logic called existential graphs. You're going to have quizzes on that. You're going to have a quiz on July 22nd and July 29th. 2 times 5, that adds up to 10%. And we're going to have a midterm at the middle of the term, and we're going to have a final at the end of the term. On August 19th, that's the time scheduled by the university. Be mindful that it starts at 8:30, not 10 a.m. Well, exams will have the whole duration of 3 hours, right? The only difference is that for the final, it starts earlier because that's scheduled by the university, all right? And the exams will be half-page answers. So there'll be questions, and the math will be really easy. It'd be like 6 questions times 5 or 5 questions times 6%, right? It's some really, really easy math. So the things are going to be graded the amount that they are. You take all of that together, and it adds up to 100%, and that is it, all right? Any questions about how you're going to be graded? If you have any questions, ask your questions. If everything's clear, say clear. And please ask your questions. Remember, this is the time. I'd rather we do this. And you can have another question later on. I'll talk about all this stuff again as we keep nearing it. Don't worry, okay? So, like, it's not the last time I talk about this stuff. But I really want to make sure that, we discuss all the basics. All right, so a bunch of dates that are important. Have a look at that. The grading scale and some other stuff. Policies, late assignments. Well, it's a really straightforward policy. It doesn't take that long to explain. If you miss an evaluation, why have I got a triangle? What the heck is this? If you miss an evaluation, then you get 0. All right. Navdeep writes, are the descriptions of the journal entries going to be provided somewhere else as well? Yeah, on the right underneath the template, you're going to have a bunch of examples of entries that got like 1 out of 5, 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, and exactly why they got it. So you can have a look at that, Navdeep. Yeah, that's part of like your homework to have a look at that. Yeah, and that's because I want to give you as much of a concrete sense, and I color coded the whole thing too, like it's going to be super clear. Yeah, and if you still have questions after that, you can always ask me, but that should be really self-explanatory. All right, you missed something, you get 0. All right, you're not there, you get 0. You were a minute late, you get 0. I don't care what the story is. All right, this is a real life criteria. So be mature, be professional, and get your stuff together. Right? It's a very straightforward policy. Have a look at it. Language competence. This I should mention. In this course, a minimum mastery of English grammar and idioms is required and expected. If English is your second or third language, or if you have serious gaps in your reading and writing skills, it might be wise to address those lacunas. This is a course that's going to make use of English, right? And so you should be mindful of that. So English needs to be at a certain level. Whether or not it is, well, that's for you to figure out. I'm assuming it's at a certain minimum. It doesn't have to be insane, right? But at a certain minimum, right? Be mindful of that. Email etiquette. While I'm happy to answer focused questions, I do not teach or give grades by email. Also, under no circumstances will any work be accepted by email. And when I mean under no circumstances, I mean under no circumstances, right? That includes the death of your mom or whatever the hell, right? I don't care. If you have to write me a message, make sure to send your message from your KPU email account. For security and legal reasons, this is mandatory. Give your message an informative title. I teach many courses, so mention our course first. Don't just say, hey, it's so-and-so. It's like, sorry, sometimes I'm too stupid. I don't remember who you are or which course you're taking with me. Sometimes I remember you, but I'm just messed up. Be polite. Begin with like, dear Professor Champagne, and then with like sincerely, and you put your full name. You break your message into paragraphs, skipping a line whenever you change topic, and you include your full name and university ID. When waiting for my reply, assume a delay of 2 working days. I check my messages only once a day, usually in the morning, but certainly never before class because that is toxic, and I want to be happy when I talk to you. Please do not send any follow-ups. All right, so this is just general etiquette for emails, by the way. Please take that on in general. It'll make you a better person and a colleague that people like to work with, all right? Email communication is crucial. You have to approach it a certain way, so please follow those guidelines, all right? The important thing to think is that, well, yeah, all that, it's all important, all right? All right, bunch of other stuff. Cheating is not tolerated. If you cheat, what happens if you cheat? Tell me in the chat bar, what happens if you cheat? You expel. Yeah. It's like, I'll catch you. I will catch you, and you will be expelled. What's cheating? Cheating is using another person's words. In this context, that's what cheating is going to be. And so if you use person's words, that's cheating. If you use another student's words, that's cheating. If you went online and you grabbed something from a website, that's cheating. Please, just think for yourself. If your English is not that great, take your chances with writing plain English and say your own thoughts. At least you won't cheat. And I appreciate honesty and directness, like be direct. So just do your best on your own. You're much better off. It's really doesn't pay. Crime doesn't pay. If you're not sure what plagiarism is, there's an awareness tutorial, and if you're still not sure, just ask. I'm happy to tell you, right? Bunch of policies that could be useful to you, a bunch of resources that could be useful to you, and finally the week-by-week breakdown. So below and on the next page, you will find a week-by-week breakdown of everything that we will do during the term. I might adjust the schedule and or alter the content. If there are any schedule or content changes, I will say so in class and announce those changes on Moodle. So here we are right now, right? Class number 1, May 13th. We're doing the overview of the course, and afterwards we're going to do a brief biographical sketch, and we're going to look at 3 keystone ideas, and those ideas are right over here. At the end of the class, what I like to do is I like to check off of these things, and we're going to have a laundry list of ideas. I don't do this for all of my courses, but for this one, it's legitimate. You see here, I have a whole column for ideas. By the end of the class, you'll understand all of these things, and we'll keep knocking off some items, not always in the order in which they're presented, right? And you have some reading to do, the Peirce packet 1 and this main document, and you have no assignment due. Next week, Thursday, May 20th, we'll do epistemology, part 1. Epistemology is the theory of knowledge, or the philosophy of knowledge. We're going to be starting to attack some of these items, not all of them. And you'll have Peirce packet number 2 to read. The Peirce packets are kept nice and short, by the way. They're all under maybe 2,500 words, like they're very short. And I've also pre-highlighted them for you. You'll see you couldn't Papa Bear loves you so much. Like, this is so pre-chewed. It's like when you see birds feeding their little kids in the nest, like that's me grabbing all this kind of, like hay and just pre-chewing it and putting my bile all over it and just feeding it down your throat. I know that sounds disgusting, but it's actually an act of love. And I'm going to give you these Peirce packets, right? So you're going to have Peirce packet number 2. And before our class, that is anytime between the end of this class and the start of the next one, you need to turn in your first entry, and you'll have a spot on Moodle. And what you do is you keep going and you check these items off the list. Like today we'll do this, right? You've read this, you've read that, you've read this, you've done this, and you keep checking these items off the list. And what you have is a breakdown. And look at what we'll be doing. Epistemology, so that's the theory of knowledge, right? After that, we're going to look at philosophy of science and semiotics. We'll do 3 classes on that. Then we'll have a midterm. So we're at week 7, right? Then we keep going. Canada Day is a day off. Philosophy of logic, which is just thinking about what logic is. Then logic, diagrammatic logic specifically, we'll spend 2 weeks learning the system of existential graphs, all of this stuff. A handful of you have actually been exposed to that with me before. We'll have some packets, some exercises for practicing on, philosophy of science, and then finally metaphysics and cosmology, and then a final exam that starts at 8:30 a.m. And if you look at this, it looks like a ice cube tray, right? You can think of this as a big ice cube tray, right? And your job is essentially to fill in the ice cube tray, right? All these little blocks here in the ice cube tray. And you gotta, I mean, what's sadder than an empty ice cube tray? Like, can you imagine, like, your partner leaves you and they take everything and all they leave in the fridge is the empty ice cube tray? I mean, that you'd have a complete breakdown if you open your freezer and he or she took all the food but only left the ice cube tray. And it was empty. They even emptied out the water. Like, you'd bawl your eyes out. You'd be like, my life's bottomed out, right? It's like, this is a sad thing right now, but we can make it happy because you can pour water in here, right? The water is your energy. The water is your life force. I'm the prof. I make the ice cube tray. You're the student. You bring in the energy. If you don't bring in the water, we'll be stuck with an empty ice cube tray, right? So your job week by week is to just pour your life energy into one of these little slots. And Papa Bear promises you do that, right? By the end of the semester, we'll be like, yay, we learned a ton and we had fun, right? So, hey, why not? All right. So you got to bring it. I can't provide the water. You must. I'll show up. I've structured this. Now you have to do it. And that's basically the relationship between you and I. I'm the ice cube tray and you're the water. And then what's the advice here at the end? Attend every class no matter what. Stay on top of your readings and assignments throughout the term. And if you're lost, confused, or unsure about something, ask me for help beforehand, since after that, nothing can be done. So if you don't do well and it's already happened, I'm going to be like, I'm so sorry to hear that, but it's too late. I'll do what I can to help you for the next thing, but I can't change your grade. This is a unique opportunity to exercise your brain by learning mind-blowing philosophical ideas, and I can't say enough about how amazing those ideas are. So if you put in the work, I will do my utmost to help you perform at your best. And finally, taking this course means that you are aware of and agree with all the terms and policies stated in this document. So if you were renting an apartment, this would be the lease, or if you were getting a gym membership, this would be the gym contract. So read the fine print carefully. That's part of your homework, because if you show up next week, that means you agree to everything in this. So you can't say, I didn't know. You knew, or at least you were supposed to know, and that's my expectation. All right. That's our main document, my friends. Any questions about the main document? So let's open up some questions now. For last call for questions. If everything's clear about the main document, type in clear. And if you got a question, please ask your question. Boy, I'm glad this is done. Like it always, the first class, it's like I have to get this out of the way, but I'd rather do it and do it well, right? And remember, if you have some more questions that occur to you throughout the week, so let's say you don't have any questions right now, everyone says they're clear, but sometime this week, as you read the document, you're like, oh, I have a question. Write it down, and then next week, ask me at the beginning of class. I'll say, are there any further questions about how the course is going to unfold? And then if you have a question, then ask me, and I'll answer, and then everyone's going to go, oh, that was helpful, right? So no big deal. We can talk about this. The conversation is not over, okay? I'm still here. All right. So who the heck is Peirce, and why should you care? I'm going to stretch my legs now. I'm getting up. I'm touching the ceiling with my hands. I'm stretching my hamstrings. Okay, I'm getting ready because now we're going to start. Who is Peirce? Well, Peirce is a lot of things. He's my friend. He's been with me for a large part of my life now. On my philosophical journey. I've learned a lot from him. Obviously, he's dead, and I never met him. That's life. But in a way, he's very much alive. I've gotten to know him through his texts, and so will you. So I'm going to introduce you to my friend. And one thing you should know about my friend is an intellectual giant, and he's a little weird looking. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of him. Here you go. That's a picture of my friend. Anybody recognize this? This is my friend. Peirce is a giant. Oh, you got it. Pacific Rim. This is a picture from a movie called Pacific Rim. Kai, what's Pacific Rim about? Tell your friends. They have to watch this. It's their homework now. You got to watch this movie. What's it all about? And yeah, John, it is a Sydney Opera House, so I don't know if that Peirce was ever there, but that's a really cool picture. Guy's going to regale us with a brief summary of what the heck Pacific Rim is all about. Yeah, it's about two friends who pilot these big robots, big-ass robots, to fight giant monsters. Like, hey, man, you can't get any better than that. Giant monsters attack different cities, and big robots come to kill them. So the giant monsters that attack are called kaijus, right? Which is a Japanese word for like big monster. And they're like huge, and you can see here by comparison with the helicopters and everything, they're gigantic. You can think of Peirce as a giant. He's not like us. This is you and me. Right, I'm some schmuck over here. Right, this is you. Good day, Mike. And this is you. Good day, Mike. Right, and Peirce is not like you or I. All right, so that's the first thing you need to wrap your mind around. I know we all like to think we're equal, but we're like so not. Peirce is a giant. Intellectually, he's not like you or I. Right, and in Pacific Rim, which is a cool science fiction movie, when the kaijus have been destroyed, they're so huge, like they fall over on the ground. We don't know what to do with their bodies. It's not like you can just put them in the back of a pickup and go. So what happens when they die is cities are just kind of built around them, because it turns out that their remains are quite valuable. Like all the parts of the kaiju can be harvested for like medication and medicine and drugs. Even like drugs are like their blood can be transformed into something that has hallucinogenic properties, and people use the bone marrow for like all sorts of things. And so when the kaijus die, they just, wherever they happen to have last fallen, right, they just fall there and their remains start rotting, and people just basically harvest all of their remains. And these are what are called bone slums. Like there's these cities that are built around these giant things. It's kind of really realistic looking if you think about it. It's actually really cool. When I found this picture, I thought it was really cool. Does anybody else agree that this is cool? If you think this is cool, type in cool, because I can't read your body language. I think this is just cool. Like the nerd in me is thinking this is cool. Right? Like if giant monsters were to attack us and we'd kill them, and then our cities would be like built around them, right? Like you so need to watch this, Ariana. The first one, there's two. The first one, second one's not as good. At least I feel. But that first one's got some magic. It's by Guillermo del Toro, who's like really good at making monsters. And so you can see here, these are the bone slums. See, they're built around these huge cadavers. You can think of Peirce as kind of a giant. And when he died, he left behind these huge remains. And we've kind of built these little houses around them, right? We started kind of learning to live around them. This is in Japan. You can see here, this like almost like a shopping mall, and it's built around the ribs. You can see all the ribs here, right? It's so awesome. Like, and then there's a black market for all of the different parts of the kaiju, right? And so you can think of Peirce along those lines as a giant. And when he died, he left us a giant body. A body of what? Well, not a body. He wasn't physically huge, right? So let's just be clear. He wasn't a giant in that sense. He left us a giant corpus. I'm going to type in the word corpus, right, in the chat bar. A corpus is just a large body of written work. He left us this gigantic amount of work. We can't even put a number to it. Estimates from people that I know, my friend André Detienne, who runs the Peirce Edition project, puts it, I believe, at 140,000 pages of work. All right, so let me just write that down, because I want to be clear that we're 100%, like 140,000 pages. Like that's a lot. Okay, so that's what I just typed, just so we're clear. That's the body that he left us. When he died, yeah, it's insane, all right? Owen asked, did he spend every waking moment writing? So what happened is sometime in the 1890s, he had a religious experience. He was always super productive and ridiculously smart, and he made contributions to a bunch of other fields. But sometime in the 1890s, he had a religious experience, and this was after he had lost all prospects of possibly becoming a university professor. So he had a really failed life. It was really miserable. He was pathetic. And he couldn't find a position in university as a professor. And when he finally lost the one job that he had gotten, he taught at Johns Hopkins University for like 2 or 3 years, and then they fired him because he didn't get along well with anyone, and everyone hated him because he was basically he was a jerk. And he was, I think, on drugs, right? If you read his biography, this is something that is a very contentious thing, but like presumably he had pain in his face, and he justified it by taking like drugs to stop the pain in his face, but he was on opium and all sorts of other stuff. And when after he had his religious experience and he realized he was a complete loser, he had lost his job, the one job that he had working as a geodetic surveyor. I'll say in a moment what that is. He decided that he had this religious experience, and during his religious experience, he heard like a voice, if you will, telling him, you have to carry the burden now. You must produce your great work, even if it means toiling in obscurity. And he started then working like even more than he ever did. And near the end of his life, he was producing the equivalent of 16 publishable pages per day, every day. And it's insane, the output. So he left us this gigantic body of work. Yeah, what? Like, it just blows you away. Can you imagine 16 publishable pages per day? And he did that nonstop for about the last 20 years of his life, full throttle, while he was dying and living in abject poverty. At one point he writes, I can't keep writing right now because my ink is frozen. So like the ink has frozen up. So I'm afraid I'll pick up tomorrow when the sun comes out because the ink is frozen. I can't afford heating in my home the ink is now frozen. And that's not joking. He died of starvation and cancer because he was so maltreated. At one point, he showed up on the Harvard campus. Students didn't even know who he was. Like, oh, this is old kind of like, you know, hobo. And William James, who was a professor of psychology at Harvard, one of the first psychology departments, who was one of the friends of Peirce, heavily introduced by him, another fellow pragmatist, we'll learn all about this, spotted him on campus. And he's like, oh, please go. Like, he helped him out. And they got together with a bunch of friends and gave him kind of an allowance every month so that he could eat. But the guy was starving to death. But nevertheless, had a prodigious output. I'm going to show you a video now to try to give you a sense of what that output looks like. On the website, our Moodle website, I will give you links on how to access all of his primary materials. So in addition to having all these packets that are pre-digested, in this course, I'm going to also give you sort of the scholarly tools to access the primary materials. So let's have a look at these. Can everyone see his face right now on the screen? If you can see that I'm screen sharing a video, if you can see his face on the screen right now, not the monster now, the real deal, right? I love his beard, and I love the way it has like these two, it kind of comes down in two parts, right? I was at a lecture one time, and Robert Branham, who was, I think, trying to look like Peirce, grew this huge beard. He's a philosopher at the University of Pittsburgh, like a big cheese. And he kept kind of pulling on his beard in these two cones throughout the entire lecture. And then he'd combine them into one cone, and then he'd divide it into two cones and one cone. And I spent the whole lecture not listening to what he was saying, but like transfixed at how he was massaging his beard into one cone, two cones, one cone, two cones. So every time I see Peirce's beard into two cones like this, I'm always like laughing because I think about that moment. Let's have a look at Peirce's manuscripts. I'm going to read what it says here. Charles Sanders Peirce left an estimated 100,000 manuscript pages. It's actually larger than that, which have been archived in the Houghton Library at Harvard for over 100 years. So after he died, we discovered that, you know, he was insane, and then his house was filled with manuscripts. And manuscript, manu comes from hand, so these are handwritten pages, right? This is what they look like. They're in color, moreover, so it's bad enough that they're there they are. This video is available. I'm going to make it available on Moodle also. Peirce's pioneering later work remains accessible only in 16-year-old incomplete black and white digitized microfilm, which cannot represent the graphical, colorful features that are crucial for interpretation, such as shown in the samples that follow. So the things that I can give you access to online are all in black and white. My colleagues and I, when we need to work on the original manuscripts, actually have to book time at Harvard to go work in the library to see the real thing, because you don't have the colors. And there's an attempt to digitize all of this, right? So here you see some work in logic, and you can see how the colors make a huge difference. Sometimes there's a lot that hinges on them. These are this is work in diagrammatic logic. You're going to learn some of this stuff when we do this in several weeks. See, when you go in, the emphasis here is in color. Right? Briefly glancing through Peirce's Harvard archive reveals its complexities. Text enclosed in graphical figures, graphics embedded in text, text contoured around graphics, whole pages of graphics with no text at all, text and graphical figures with distinctions shown in as many as 5 colors. Right? So this is a treasure trove, it turns out. Like, it could be the work of a madman. Do you understand? Like, this is, for instance, this page right now. This is one sheet of notes. This is Peirce providing the first trivalent logic. This is the first non-classical non-bivalent logic. These are breakthroughs in all of these different fields. It looks like the work of a madman, the scribblings of a lunatic in an asylum, but it's actually, and believe it or not, these are all breakthroughs. The guy, for instance, scribbled on, almost like a napkin, the blueprint for making a computer like 50 years before it was built. It's just insane. It's replete with all of this stuff. Like, he was a complete genius, and he stopped trying to be understood with his generation. He just went and plowed full throttle ahead in the privacy of his own home, churning out page after page after page, right, of these brilliant breakthroughs in all of these areas, a bunch of areas in philosophy and in science, right? Was a practicing scientist, a major mathematician, and a major logician, right? wrote entire handwritten treatises on geometry. My friend Ahti Pietarinen, with whom I did my postdoctoral studies, we worked on this. These are called existential graphs. Some of the doodles were also experiments on what the diagrams can actually afford. He did mazes. This is a maze. He was like a weird kind of Asperger syndrome kind of person. This was his house. Peirce and his wife Juliet designed and built their final home that they called Arisby. He despaired of publishing comprehensive books and merely hoped to have enough time and energy to work out and write down his entire system. Right? All that you can find in print of my work, he said, are simply scattered outcroppings here and there of a rich vein that remains mostly unpublished. Most of it, I suppose, has been written down, but no human being could ever put together the fragments. I could not myself do so. So Peirce himself understood that he couldn't even bring order to his work. Right, and here's I told you his output per year. Right, you can see how there's a spike there. The largest amount of work that he ever produced was near the end of his life. Right, because at that point he was basically unemployed, so he had all this free time. And his estimated 50,000 manuscript pages that remain unpublished are now in brittle condition, although Harvard's library's recent conservation treatment prepares them for safe digitization. So there's an effort to digitize all of this stuff. And this is a video on the Harvard website that's trying to raise funds for the digitization endeavor, right? Because some of these papers are starting to fall apart. And it's insane. Like, we don't want to lose that. This is absolute philosophical gold, right? If you like, the full extent of Peirce's writings and ideas and accomplishments remains largely obscure and unknown. Let me just show that thing again, right? This pie chart, the largest part of it is all the unpublished stuff. The previously published material, right? That's the one of the slices of pizza there, and the rest is all unpublished, so mostly unpublished. Some physicist says Peirce imaginatively anticipated some of the most surprising elements of modern physical cosmology. We'll see that when we do a bit of cosmology near the end of the semester. He had a different view of the universe, a very surprising one. These are quotes from various notable people who know what the heck they're talking about, saying how that guy was a genius. We're going to focus on philosophy, but his accomplishments were wide-ranging, so not just in philosophy, right? There's a nice little classical piece of music that accompanies this, but I want to be able to speak, plus the music put me to sleep. This is a map that Peirce was making. He was proposed to redo the map of the world as 4 grids and five squares, and so it's really weird. Like, he would try to patent all of these inventions, by the way, and very unsuccessfully too. He always fell prey to these get rich quick schemes, because he couldn't hold down a steady job. So he just hoped that one of his inventions would kind of one day make him rich so that he could devote himself to philosophy full time. He always applied for grants and was turned down because he wanted to devote himself to writing his books in philosophy and in logic and mathematics, and no one ever sort of supported him. Like one time he applied, let me just say this. One time he applied for a grant. Do folks know about non-Euclidean geometry? Does that ring a bell? Just ring a bell. Don't have to know what it is, but non-Euclidean geometry, does that ring a bell? Say yes if it does. No? Yeah? All right, so according to non-Euclidean geometry, so Riemann, Lobachevsky, some of these geometers developed these geometries that sort of don't take on classical assumptions that you find in standard geometry. And according to those, like, things like the inside angles of a triangle always add up to 180. These things don't necessarily hold in those non-Euclidean geometries. Peirce was applying for a grant once, and he said, look, I suspect that the inner angles of a triangle don't add up to 180, but only like approximate it, and I want to do research on that, and he was turned down. Like, he was anticipating major discoveries like 50 years before they were happening, but people had no foresight, so they just thought he was crazy. Nearly half of Peirce's manuscripts at Harvard have never been effectively published. right? So you're going to have access to that in this class. I've shown you this one video. Did you like that? Did you like seeing the actual manuscript? Some of you have never actually seen like written primary source material. Did you enjoy that video? I'll show you another video after. Good. It's super, like I said, I'm kind of giddy, right? Because this is like, oh, that's not the one I want. I want to share screen the other one. All right, I'm gonna show you another video now. This is from André Detienne, who's the person heading the Peirce edition project. So the people trying to put together his writing. Can everyone see this on the screen? It says the Peirce edition project. All right, so I'm going to show you this video now, and he's going to talk to you about what they're trying to do and how they're trying to salvage his literary remains, that big kaiju body that fell, right? Remember, Peirce is a giant. He left us a giant corpus, not a giant corpse.
We are here in the heart of the Institute. We are at this moment in the library, which is named after Professor Max Fish. Professor Max Fish is a great American philosophical scholar who established the Peirce edition project at IUPUI in the mid-1970s. The Peirce project is one of the core elements of the Institute. It was established more than 30 years ago, and the main mission of the project is to produce a chronological, critical edition of the works of one of the greatest geniuses of the United States. In order to drive the point about who was Charles Sanders Peirce, I would like to show you a little other great philosopher. Everyone recognizes this particular statue, which is that of Aristotle. Aristotle is one of the two great founders of Western philosophy. Plato, before him, and then himself. Aristotle is one of the most prodigious intellects in the history of thought. He founded Western philosophy. Now, it happens that Charles Sanders Peirce has been named or dubbed already in his time as the American Aristotle. You would not give that title to just about any philosopher, only to the cream of the cream, to the first-rank philosophers, those prodigious minds that have revolutionized the way we think and the way we understand what it means to think about thinking and about the world and about reality, etc. Charles Sanders Peirce received the title of the American Aristotle because he was the only intellect who really deserved that kind of title by virtue of his contributions. I return Aristotle to my pocket. It is nice to have Aristotle in one's pocket as a reminder. But I am not publishing the works of Aristotle, I am publishing the works of Peirce. Peirce is recognized as on the same rank because he was a logician, he was a scientist, he was a mathematician, and of course he was one of the greatest philosophers. What did he do? Many researches. Among them, in logic, he is the founder of what is called today the logic of relations, which is a type of logic that revolutionized and replaced Aristotle's logic. He also came up with a new system of representation in logic called graphical logic, something that is being studied today all over the world. In the sciences, he was a geodesist, a scientist who studied the figure of the earth, who would go here and there throughout the land, establish stations where he would swing a pendulum and measure the pull of gravity here and there to figure out the figure of the earth. He spent 31 years of his life in at the United States Coast and Geodetic Survey in order to do that kind of research in which his skills also as an astronomer and as a mathematician were important. As a mathematician, he did a lot of work, revolutionary work too, in the mathematics of continuity and the mathematics of the infinite. He also was one of the founders of this important branch of mathematics called topology. He also did great work in the theory of numbers and did a lot of applied mathematics in many different fields, including the field of bridge engineering. He worked for a bridge engineer and did a lot of calculations about different problems that had to do with the strength that this bridge had to be able to sustain. As a scientist, he was also a chemist. He actually got a degree in chemistry, one of the first one in this land, and and came up with his own inventions that he hoped were going to help make him money, but that was one of those things he was not too good at. He never made money out of his chemical inventions. As a philosopher, he is known as the founder of pragmatism. Pragmatism is important in the history of philosophy, especially in the United States, because it is the only truly original contribution that this country has done to the history of philosophy. It is a type of philosophy that could only have been born in this land, and it happened to be primarily under the pen of Charles Sanders Peirce. Another area where he has done key contribution is the logic of science, also known as semiotics. Semiotics is today studied in a lot of universities on all the continents on this planet. Semiotics is one of these methods of investigation that are truly interdisciplinary. It is used in the humanities, it is used in the hard sciences, it is used, for instance, in biology, and in the social sciences. It is also useful to those who study the arts, in art history, and also in the study of aesthetics, the kind of logic that Peirce came up with in order to explain what is going on, say, in a painting, or in the experience that one has with the painting. He provided the kind of method that allows one to make sense of that kind of experience. So Peirce is being studied today all over the world. What the Peirce Edition project does is to produce a critical and chronological edition of his works. It happens that his works are not in a good condition. He produced about 150,000 pages of manuscript over his life. Most of those pages, unfortunately, are in disarray. They are not paginated, they are not dated, and it behooves us here at IUPUI to bring all of these works back into a state that they can be read by and become useful to philosophical scholars and many other scholars.
Now we are here in the lab of the Peirce Edition project, and these are the papers, or these photocopies of the papers of the American philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce. And what we do here is we try to reconstruct Peirce's documents from the remains of Peirce's manuscripts as they remain behind after his death. So most of the work we are doing here is to reconnect pages that have been disconnected through time. Charles Peirce is an American philosopher. He is a logician and a mathematician as well, and that poses very difficult questions for trying to reconstruct documents that have a lot of symbols in them, very changing patterns of thought. And he wrote everything by longhand, so we depend a lot on following Peirce's handwriting and seeing where he's going, how he's retracing his thought, and just reconstructing several trains of thoughts next to one another. The Peirce project is dedicated to the publication of the works of Charles Sanders Peirce in a chronological edition. We have published so far 7 volumes. This is part of volume 11. We are very busy with volume 9, which is at the moment being in layout. And then we do volume 11, which is Peirce's logic book. And after that, we go back in time to volume 10 to do everything that's left behind in mostly 1894. What we do here is a lot of scholarly work, and we have, with respect to students, quite a number of students come in that are research associates or research assistants. Most of the research associates that work for the Peirce project are mostly doing historical research, trying to trace the names and the references made by Peirce in the documents. He had a very bad habit of not telling where he got his stuff from, so that needs to be retraced, and students are really great help in doing that. We also have an MA program in American philosophy, and most of the students that work here come from that MA program, which specializes exclusively, or mostly at least, to students who want to know more about American philosophy rather than philosophy in general.
So my friends, when you go back to this slide now, does this make more sense now? Can you see what I meant when I said he left us this huge body of work and we kind of are building around it? Tell me if you enjoy that, if it makes more sense now. It's like there was a giant among us and he just died, you know, and then we were left with all of this stuff and we're kind of like harvesting it, you know. It's like I'm that dude over here, right? Like I built a little shack right over here, right? And I'm like, I specialize on his kidney. Like, let's say like I eat parts of his kidney, right? Or something like that. And I'm giving you the tour, right? All of you are going to get the tour of the Peirce, the bone slums, right? Kai writes, are you related to the Peirce Edition project professor? Not related by blood. He's French and I'm Quebecois, so I suppose we speak the same language, but he is a colleague of mine. I actually was thinking maybe at some point I might email him and ask him if he wants to talk to the class here, although he's super busy. But no, he's just a colleague, if you will. We work in the same area because we both work on Peirce. He likes my work and I like his, and so yeah, that makes us colleagues. There's quite a few of us working on this cadaver. Yeah. That Owen asked, so Peirce's work was not appreciated out until his death. No, it took actually even longer than his death. The collected papers of Charles Sanders Peirce. So there's a bunch of resources, right? I'm going to type those in. When Peirce's body of work started being, if you will, processed, the first thing that came out was called the Collected Papers, CP. The Collected Papers started coming out in 1931. So Peirce died in 1914, and the first volume of the Collected Papers, which was in 8 volumes, came out in 1931, and that was just the first volume. It took until 1958 for all 8 volumes to come out. So it took a while. So even after his death, it took like at least 25 years. People didn't know what to do with all that. One of the earlier people, if you know a little bit about philosophy, one of the earlier people to read Harvard's manuscripts was Willard Van Orman Quine. So the influence was already being felt by whoever would go rummage through those papers. Karl Popper also was one of the people who went through the papers and basically emerged a new man. And then after that, a bunch of other stuff came out. The convention, by the way, is CP. That stands for Collected Papers. That's something that's going to be available on Moodle. I'll show you that. Right now, we're working on the writings. So the Collected Papers is supposed to be, right, in 8 volumes, volumes 1 to 8. The writings is supposed to be volumes 1 to 30. It's projected that it'll take 30 volumes to do the chronological edition of his writings. So like 30, maybe 2,000-page volumes, all tight, TypeScript, all the clean written stuff, not the handwritten stuff, like all worked out, chronological, all the redundancies removed. That's the writings. And then a bunch of other stuff came out. Like one of the things that's still coming out is Logic of the Future, right? The Logic of the Future is going to be, I think, in 4 volumes. That's all the stuff in existential graphs. Another one is New Elements of Mathematics, codename NEM. That's in 4 volumes. So this is, I believe, going to be 4 volumes, Logic of the Future. Again, I know the people who work on this stuff. New Elements of Mathematics is in 4 volumes. And so there's a bunch of other stuff. And I told you the one that you could buy is the Essential Peirce. So it's a codename EP, Essential Peirce volumes 1 and 2. So that's like, if you will, I wouldn't say the beginner's guide because it's still hard, but into 2 volumes. But all of that will be available for you on the Moodle page. So it's just insane. It's like literally, like I'm not kidding when I say like a giant monster, a kaiju, and it took years and we're still figuring it out. Like the logic stuff that's coming out here, the diagrammatic logic stuff, I'm like one of the only persons on the planet who's ever taught it at an undergraduate level. The stuff you're going to learn, like I'm arguably one of the only persons in the world who can teach it at an accessible level. So it's still in the process of coming out. They're so ahead of their time that we are in 2021 and we're still beginning to wrap our minds around it. That's how crazy it is. So and we're not done. We're not done. We're not done discovering what was in there. So it's a complete treasure trove of stuff. Owen, how do you like? So does that answer your question? It took a while. We're still underway. Still underway. You folks are literally part of that process. I'm involving you in the process of discovery of his works. It's not over. It's actually underway still. We're not done interpreting him. Okay, so now for the big overview. All right. So where do his ideas fit in philosophy? Is everyone ready for my big overview? Just want to check in with everyone because we have a long video and everything. Is everyone still there, alert, good to go, enjoying this? Y'all on board? Good, because I can't get your body language, right? Good stuff. Okay. I appreciate it, right? Because I need to get some sense that folks are still there. I'm going to give you now a very low resolution picture of the history of philosophy. I mean, forgive me for being simplistic, but sometimes being simplistic is better than nothing, and you got to start somewhere. I'm going to ask two questions. Is the philosopher from ancient Greece? That's the first question I'm going to ask, right? And the second question, does the philosopher want to avoid uncertainty and error? I'm going to do a very, very coarse-grained picture. So you have these two questions, and they admit of a yes or no answer. So you might say, you know, is the philosopher from ancient Greece? Like yes and no. And does the philosopher want to avoid uncertainty or error? Yes and no, right? And that carves out four possibilities. We could put Plato over here. Plato's from ancient Greece. And if you know anything about Plato, Plato doesn't like uncertainty and error. One of the reasons why he wants to turn away from the observation provided by our senses is because the world is always in flux, the actual world, right? And the world of mathematics that he loves so much and the Platonic forms is unchanging. Plato's not a fan of uncertainty and error. His whole philosophy is an escape from that, right? And you find the same theme once again in René Descartes. So also, if you know a few things about René Descartes, he's not an ancient Greek philosopher, but he's also not a fan of uncertainty and error, right? As soon as you can doubt something a little bit, he doubts it across the board. He just wants to be anchoring his philosophy in things that are 100% certain, and he doesn't want to make any mistakes. And you can contrast Plato with Aristotle, obviously. Aristotle's much more easygoing about the possibility of uncertainty. He has room in his philosophy for what's called inductive generalization. So you can generalize and have kind of approximate conclusions, even though they're not 100% perfect. He is the founder of logic, so there's room for 100% certainty in deduction. But in Aristotle, you don't get this kind of manic obsession with trying to get away from the world because the world is messy and full of uncertainty, and trying to get away from our human nature because we make mistakes, right? In Plato, there's this desire to escape from the cave, right? To go to this place where we don't make any mistakes. You don't get that at all in Aristotle. And you can think of Peirce as fitting over here, right? Peirce is the American Aristotle, and he's the American Aristotle not just for his prodigious output and intellect, but also because he shares some traits. And I'm going to contrast him. You can make a parallel, right, with Aristotle, and you could argue that he's very unlike Descartes. And Descartes is actually going to be the bad guy. He's going to be the Professor Moriarty to our Sherlock Holmes, right? He's going to be the bad guy for our story that we're going to tell. I'm just going to bring him up once in a while just to bring out a contrast. I'm hoping that these four figures, Plato, Descartes, and Aristotle, and now Peirce is obviously new to you, but I'm hoping that these are names you've heard before, right? Can I confirm that you've heard those names before? Just heard the names before? Plato, Descartes, and Aristotle? Say yes if you have and no if you haven't. Yeah. Okay, good. So I can assume that much. And maybe some of you have taken courses on them, right? Who's read some Descartes? Say yes if you've read some Descartes, for instance. Like the Meditations on First Philosophy, which is you often read, right, if you take an introductory course or... Okay, good. Good. So you know a few things. So the contrast is actually kind of helpful. You can think of Peirce, like just focusing on these two things here. One quick way, and I told you it's a big picture, Peirce is the ultimate anti-Descartes. Like whatever Descartes' about, Peirce is as far as you can get away from him, right? Peirce is the complete opposite of Descartes' approach to philosophy, right? We'll see that in the coming weeks. We'll see that a little bit today and much more so in the coming weeks. So that's our where his ideas fit in the history of philosophy. We'll go back to this picture, right, throughout the semester, and it'll make more and more sense, especially the contrast between Descartes and Peirce, right? And I want to theme this as, you know, the American Aristotle. We're not going to do some Aristotle or some Plato. I'll briefly mention some Descartes. I'll give you 3 pages of Descartes as a kind of just a quick reminder of what he's all about, so we have a clear picture. But that's a good one way of understanding him. I want to do some exercises now, and these exercises are experiments with you. So this is going to require your participation. The first exercise is going to be an a posteriori exercise. A posteriori means, you know, based on observation, if you will. All right. An a posteriori knowledge is a kind of knowledge that you couldn't acquire just by thinking harder in your chair, right? You'd have to go out and investigate. So for instance, if I ask you, how heavy is my youngest son, who's currently screaming in the bedroom, because that's what he does. He always screams. You know, you can't tell sitting in your armchair, you know, how much he weighs. If I tell you 2 + 2, that's 4. You can figure that out on your own, right? So that's a posteriori. It's the kind of thing you can't figure out on your own. One of the things you can't figure out on your own, for instance, is the position of the stars. And Peirce did some work in astronomy. So here's the cover of an article, Measuring the Heavens, Charles Sanders Peirce and Astronomical Photography. I really like, she's, I believe, Dutch, Odd Sissel Heul. I've told her I like her work, and she writes really interesting pieces in science and technology studies. And I'm going to just read a few parts from this article just to give you a sense of what Peirce did in terms of this is blocking everything I want to underline. Can people see what's written in here in yellow? Can you see that? Because I can't. People can't see it? What a complete bloody nightmare. All right, screw that. All right, screw that then. This is a nightmare. Okay, so on the file I wanted, obviously this is just supposed to be underlined, not covering up. Like, who the hell cares? Yeah, it's classified. Well, screw that. I'll just give you the digest version. All right, so Peirce did these astronomical observations. This is the instrument that he was using. And astronomers looking through these instruments, like this is a telescope, right? You're staring up at the sky. You can think of it as the following, right? Each astronomer is making observations about the position of the stars, right? So let me just go and give myself a nice fresh sheet to work on. You're looking at the sky. So let's imagine this is the night sky, right? You're looking at the night sky, you're an astronomer, and you're trying to spot a certain star, let's say, right? And if you think it's here, then you put your dot right over here. You think, oh, there's where that star is. But now another astronomer is also trying to find the same star, and that other astronomer, she says it's over here. The star is over here, right? And they take another astronomer somewhere else is trying to see the star and makes a measurement and says that the star is over here. And another one is trying to make a measurement and says that the star is over here. And another person somewhere else in the world is trying to look at the same star and they say it's over here, right? And another person saying it's here. Each time I'm color coding this, that means a different person, right? Another person says it's here, right? All right. So each one of these people is using an instrument. Each one of these people is trying their best to actually get the position of the star right. Which one of these, look at the colors, where's the star? Where's the actual star? Because there's only one star. Right now I've got how many dots? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 observations. And those observations don't necessarily pinpoint the star at the same place. There's only one star. There can't be 7 stars. There's only one. Where's the one star in the world? Tell me in the chat bar, where's the one star in the world? The one star that they're trying to find out, where is it? Which one is it? Which color? None of them would be too strong. Andrew says none of them. Do we agree that that's too strong? It could be one of them. To say none of them, that would be too strong. Can we agree on that? Andrew, can you claw that back? You see, that'd be too strong. Like, we can't confidently say none of them because maybe one of them lucked out. Maybe they got it. Like Blue Man over here, maybe he lucked out. Do you see that, Andrew? That would be too strong to say none of them. Do you see that? Possibly one of them. That's true. That would be accurate. Not all of them. Can we agree on that? So if I write, for instance, not all of them, can we agree on that? Not all of them. Can we at least agree on that? Possibly one of them. Not all of them. Arjun, right? It all just depends on your perception. No, it doesn't. I mean, it kind of does because you had to look at. But does that mean, Arjun, that there are 7 stars out there? When you say that, Arjun, how many stars are out there in the planet? How many things were they looking at? 1, 7. Tell me. 1. Agreed. So it doesn't just all depend on your perception. It depends on the trivial sense that you had to perceive the star. Do we agree? In that trivial sense, it does depend on your perception. These are observations, and the measurements are done by measurers with measuring instruments, right? But the thing is, we don't know where the star is, right? The star in and of itself is something we're trying to get at, right? And each observation is trying to get at it, but overall, right, we can't really tell. What would be a good way of guessing? If you had to bet where the star is, I'm going to give you two possibilities. I'm going to put a grid over here, right? I'm going to put a grid. I'm going to say, actually, that's way too big. Let me put this in a small line, a small black line. Let me make a grid. You have to bet. On one possibility, the sign is, the star is here, and on the other, it's here. All right. Let's call this, hold on, right? Let's call this one over here possibility 1. And let's call this, this coordinate here possibility 2. Which you think is the likeliest? Possibility 1 or 2? I agree. I agree. Why is that? Yeah, exactly. Right? The aggregate of observations is closer to 2. The majority of the data suggests it's in that area, right? As more and more people look at this, right, there's still, can we agree that 1 could be, for all we know, 1 could be where the star is? Do we agree on that? For all we know. There's a possibility that 1 got it right and everybody else got it wrong, right? All right, we agree on that. But the rational thing to think is that it's probably where all of the observations start to converge, right? Peirce's philosophy is going to be inspired by that, right? I'm going to do an experiment with you now. I'm going to clear everything. I'm going to allow you now. Can everyone see their name on the screen? Move your mouse on the screen. Can you see your name? You should have a toolbar on the right. Put the toolbar, and I'd like everyone to pick just a black dot. Can you pick the smallest black dot? Pick the pencil, and then pick the smallest dot in black for the pencil, and then make your dot. I just did mine. Everyone try to make a black dot. As many black dots as you can. Let's fill the screen with black dots. Everyone make a black dot. Someone's making red dots. Try the black dots. Small ones. Someone's got a thicker pencil. Whoever's doing this one, it's too thick. Make your pencil even smaller. Black dots. Someone's got a gray dot. It's a little too small. Try the black dot. Good. Let's try again. Black dots. All right, let's try again. Black dots, everyone. Black dots everywhere. No lines, just black dots. Just click once with your clicker. You got it. Okay, cool. Pause. Everyone stop moving. Stop moving. This is like really cool. Don't you think this is cool? I think this is cool. All right, good. All right, so we got it. We're going to do an exercise together. All right. I'm going to now, this is the night sky. I'm going to show you a star. It's going to happen really quickly. Stand ready to do the same thing you were doing with the dot. You're going to be allowed 1 dot. When I say so, everyone's going to be allowed to make 1 dot. Not 2, not 3, not a bunch, just 1. Okay? And I'm going to show you the star for just a brief moment, and then it'll revert back to being the screen that you have right now. It'll be a blank screen, and everyone has to try to put the dot where the star was. Does everyone understand those instructions? If they're clear, write clear. If you have a question, write your question. And of course, this is only fun if you play along. So, all right. I'm going to wait till everyone's done typing. We're going to get ready. Okay. And be mindful. The star could be anywhere on the screen, so stand ready to see. All right. It'll be there for a brief moment, then it will vanish. And then I want you, to the best of your ability, to pinpoint where the star was as soon as I make it available for you. All right. Let me just check with everyone if they're ready. Type in ready if you're ready. We're going to take our time because we'll do this once and we'll do it well. I don't want to redo it. Okay. Good. Once everyone's done typing ready, I'll count down to 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. I'm going to make it available for you. 1 dot only. And then when you're done, stop. When you're done and you've done it, write done in the chat bar. Cool. Terrific. Now I'm going to zoom in. Right? I'm going to zoom in. Whoopsie. I'm going to zoom in. This is me zooming in. Let me just drag this. Zoom in. I'm trying to zoom in as much as I can. Here we go. I'm trying to zooming in again. All right, here we go. Zoom. Where are you? Where are you? Let's try again. I'm trying to zoom in on this. Okay, here we are. I got to go much more slowly. See if I can zoom in. Much more slowly. I'm going to zoom in. Much more slowly. I'm going to zoom in. Much more slowly. Much more slowly. Look at that. How beautiful is that? Right? Now, all of you were trying to get to the truth. I think all of you were honest, right? There's a truth of the matter about where the star was. Can we all agree on that? There's a fact of the matter about where the star was. Can we all agree? Now, me, I'm the prof, right? I'm in the position of God right now because I know where the star is. I've got the previous slide, right? But none of us are ever in this position. The position I'm currently occupying doesn't exist for us and you and I as real humans. You and I, we're actually in the position of you as the student. We do our best to figure out where stuff is, how stuff is. Let the star be reality, right? It's not as if there is a solution sheet that we can consult and we can say, hey, this is the correct answer. Like God provided us with the solution sheets of reality, and then we check our judgments and our observations and our representations of the world against that for a match or mismatch. All we have to go on is not the little star that I showed you, but our best attempt at approximating it. So right now, right, if I had to draw a grid, like I did a moment ago, right, and I had to make a guess about where it's most likely that the star in fact was, I think, I mean, some of the dots are fatter, so it's kind of misleading. I think I would put it over here. Or maybe even a bit below, like maybe over here. Does that sound reasonable? Does this seem like an overall kind of, this is where we were tending to go? Can anyone agree? Is that decent? That's a pretty decent estimate. Yeah. And notice now, no individual actually clicked there. Do we see the intersection of those two lines? No one individual actually clicked there. No one actually made that observation. But this is the likeliest place it would be. Now, there's no file for me in real life. In real life, there's no file for me to check against this. And you have to get comfortable with that idea. I told you a moment ago that the contrast is with Descartes and Plato and philosophies that don't like uncertainty and error. According to this, how many people are in error right now? If this is the real position of the star, how many people are in error? Everyone. Every single person's wrong, right? But that's still, we're trying to get to the truth. Do you understand? We're trying to figure it out, even though we're all in error. Now, let me ask you a question now. How could we improve this? What would make it better? What would be a way to improve the likelihood of pinpointing the star? So if I had to redo this again, what is one thing I can do without having the solution sheet, God's solution sheet to check against? What's something I could do? What are some changes to the protocol that I could do, right, in order to get closer to the truth? Looking closer, true. Better, I suppose, observations and instruments. Reese writes more data points. Leaving the star up longer, true. The longer it lasts, can we agree if I would have kept this longer, we would have gotten closer to the truth? Do we agree? Longer time? Agree or disagree? Longer time. Agreed. Good. All right. More participants. What about more participants? Does that help? If I ask more people, instead of having this class, it's like 1 billion people and they all do it. Why not? Now writes no. Suppose we have more and more people. Wouldn't that get us more likely to the truth? You see that? I'm not saying we'd get to the truth. I'm not saying that more people guarantees we get to the truth. So let's be really clear in our language. I'm not saying if we had more people involved, we'd be guaranteed to figure it out. But we'd certainly get closer to figuring out. It'd be much more likely. Like right now, for instance, here's another thing to point out, right? This person over here, right? Let me just use my my thing here. Could they be right? Yes or no? Could this person be right? For all we know. Yeah. In Peirce's philosophy, you'll see that on the webpage, I have something called the first rule of reason, right? And the first rule of reason is do not block the way of inquiry. This person's a freak right now. As far as the consensus is concerned, this person's an outlier. But for all we know, that person might be true. That person might be right. And in Peirce's philosophy, there's plenty of room for open inquiry because you never can discount the possibility that the people, no matter how unlikely what they're saying, they might be right. And that what you want instead of solitary knowledge is a collective enterprise, a collective pursuit, trying to get to the truth. And the truth and reality, like if I were to type in R, right, and let that R stand for reality, right, it generalizes, right? Reality is just what we're trying to get. This R here at the intersection, that's reality. It's what we're trying to approximate. And the best way for us to try to approximate it is collectively, right? By making room for mistakes, open to the possibility that we might be wrong, that the people that seem unlikely might be right, and to keep going over time and with more people. I'm going to pause there for a moment. Does that make sense, everyone? If that made some sense, tell me. Like if that's the beginning of kind of, I'm laying different layers here. We're going to have multiple washes on this. And remember, there's another important moral here. We never get to do this. Are you ready? I'm going to do something we can't do. There you go. We can't do this. We can't match and mismatch. It turns out this is where it was. We can never do this. This is very satisfying for us. But there's no special place where we can have a view of the universe that is so 100% perfect, right? And we can compare where our mistakes are. We can't tell where our mistakes are. This picture of the world, right? This is, oh, sorry, it's a triangle, right? This picture of the world, what you have in the screen right now, this is the human condition. Peirce's philosophy is a philosophy that tries to own up to this. It's a philosophy that rejects this. You never get to be in this position. There's no mystical insight, clear and distinct intuition. You know, you can't exit the cave. You never get there. All we have to get used to living in this slide. So that's the a posteriori, right, exercise. And you can see here, we're all aiming to get the world right, right? And the more we aim and the longer we aim and the more of us there are, the closer we get to it. And what we mean by reality is that thing we're trying to figure out, right? It's the thing we're trying to figure out. It's the thing we're all actually trying to direct our gaze at and trying to register and understand imperfectly as we can, right? So that's the first one, the first exercise. Let me pause and see if folks like this. Did you like that? Good. Because I'm taking a risk with you, right? And I'm using these really cool tools, right? And this only works if you work, right? I can't do this alone. Like the magic only happens if all of y'all are playing along with me. Let's do the a priori exercise. All right. This one's going to take, so Reese writes, does he ever believe the star can be found like in math? Well, here's what happened. Peirce, one of the things that we couldn't see in the article that I was showing you is Peirce actually developed mathematical algorithms for aggregating the observations of astronomers to the likeliest position of the star. Yeah, but you can never find it. You can have, in his philosophy, by principle, you can always get nearer to it, but never find it fully. Reese, we'll see that next week. Does that answer your question? In principle, you can never say, hey, this is it. Yeah. It just gets closer and closer and closer, but you never actually reach it. Yeah, because you can never step outside yourself. You can never go, because what it would take to be 100% certain, this can get to 99.999, but 100% certain would be doing this. You never get to do that. You never get to do that. That's not in the cards for you as a human, right? Let's do the a priori exercise, all right? This one's going to require, again, work on your end. All right. Peirce was a geodetic surveyor. So what he would do is he would swing pendulums at different parts of the United States. And depending on the level of elevation relative to the sea level or how far it is from the center of the Earth's gravity, right, pendulums will swing quicker or slower depending on how elevated they are. But the variation in the pendulum swings is so slight that the only way to determine, because if you think about it, how unintuitive. Like if I swing a pendulum on the first floor of a building, let's say on a strata, and I'm on the first floor versus the 8th floor, it actually swings a little slower on the 8th floor. I mean, that's just an imperceptible difference. The only way to gauge that difference is by doing a lot of swings of the pendulum, writing down all of the measurements of the time it took for the pendulum to swing. So you can imagine a pendulum being swung on the 8th floor, a pendulum being swung on the first floor. You do it 1,000,000 times, and then you add up all of those results, and then you can see that there is a slight slower version at the 8th floor than the first floor. So Peirce was actually hired as a computer. And computer means, this is before calculators, he had to actually do by hand all of the math, all right, to add up all of these measurements. So these are pages from the manuscripts. I just randomly pulled some pages. I believe this is manuscript 1095. I just grabbed a few sheets from it, right? These are all calculations of pendulum swings when Peirce was working for the United States Coast and Geodetic Survey. That's the one job he managed to hold for a while because his father got it for him. And he got to not work with people because he was not a people person, right? And these are all these calculations he had to do. This is before calculators. You had to do all of this by hand. So Peirce was a mathematician, but it was literally called a computer. Computers were people who just added large numbers, right? I want to check right now your math skills for a moment because I'm going to have you work. But before that, can somebody please do this piece of math? 3 plus 4 makes. Thank you. Just checking because I need to know. Yeah, approximate. Andrew, strangely enough, Peirce would say that, but we'll get there. 3 plus 4 makes 7. Yeah. Now let's have some fun, okay? I want you to add all of these numbers, all right? Now I'm going to give you a tool. Look at the chat bar. I want you to click on this link. This is the calculator with no limits on the decimal spaces. So click on this link. Once you've opened the link, tell me that it's open. So click on the link, open it as a separate tab. Okay, so I want everyone to open that link. And like it's called Math is Fun, right? Yeah, no worries, my friend. Do what you must. Reese, see you next time. All right, so I want you, if you're gung-ho, right, we're going to take, let's see, 4 minutes to do this. We're 5 minutes. Let's take 5 minutes to do this. I want you to add all of these numbers. Is everyone ready to go? Say good to go if you're going to do this. You have to add all of these numbers together. So what you need to do is, here's the job. Plus, plus, plus. Get started. You can type in as long a number as you want. You can use the website. You don't have to use that website. You can use whatever website you want. So, yeah. And of course, you can't just screen grab this, right? As far as I understand, there's no way for you to select all these numbers, so you have to type them in. All right. So I'll tell you what, we're going to use 5 minutes for this. All right. It's currently 11:57, so we'll be done at 12:02. Cameron is doing it. Ritu is doing it. John is doing it. Whoever's doing it, just say, I'm doing it. Then I can go back to work. I don't want to use your precious minute. I want to see how many people are going to try this. All right. Anyone who's game, just go for it. Add them all. Make the sum. I'm going to put mute. I'm going to leave this on the screen. And at 12:02, we're going to come back. So I'll write here, right? 12:02. Results at 12:02. All right, everyone, if you can hear me, type in hi. Hi. Did any of the people who tried doing the addition, did any succeed? If you have a result, type in result. Just write result, just so I know if you managed it. Ritu? Kai? All right. I'm going to ask you, all right, look at your result, all right? I would like you to go, starting from left to right, so going like this, like left to right, could you please go to the 11th digit and tell me what that digit is? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Go to the 11th digit and type in what that number is. So Ritu, Kai, Cameron, and Nav have attained results. All right, so who's right? We got 2 7s, 3 5s, 1 2. This is math, right? Who's right, people? I'm asking the whole class, which is the right number? So what's the 11th digit of the sum? So if we do a sum, right, remember what we're doing. We're adding all of these numbers, and we're saying, what's the sum, right? Sum. And I ask, what's the 11th digit of it? And people come up with different numbers. Guess 5. That's probably the likeliest guess. But again, right, notice how even when we do math, once the math gets a little complicated, right, it's not obvious, right? So let me just show you. The sum is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 5, the 11th place. But now you might say, well, this is different from the astronomy example because there's a result to check against. But I'm going to ask you a question, and this is a really big question, right? What makes you think this is the right result? This is supposed to be a question mark. What makes you think this is the right result? Like I did this on the same app you did. Because you're told by me, do you know with 100% certainty that this is the best, this is the accurate result? Yes or no? Do you know with 100% certainty that this is the absolute, this is the correct result? Yes or no? And of course, the correct answer to that is no. That's right, Oscar, Andrew, everybody else, right? The correct answer is you don't know with 100% certainty that this is, and how, so I just trust the calculator, right? How do you know the calculator works well? What would be the proof, if you will, that the calculator is functioning properly? What would constitute an experimental proof that the calculator is functioning properly? How could you check whether or not the calculator functions properly? Kai says, I like what Kai says, other calculators work in the same way. If other calculators get to the same result, now you agree, Kai, that all of the other calculators would also be wrong. You see that? They might just still be wrong. Do you see that, Kai? Right? But if they all give the same result, you have greater chance, right, of thinking that that's the correct answer. But do we agree that the same situation we confronted in astronomy is confronted in mathematics when the mathematics gets serious enough and there's a human element involved? And the human element is involved in all sorts of ways. You had to transcribe these numbers, right? And the machine is built by yourself, right? But we never, once again, we never get to step outside and leave the cave to compare ourselves. Because in Plato's cave, right, this number is a shiny number, like it's glowing, it's golden, right? It's like, whoa. It's, you know, once you've exited the cave, it's like, I don't know what it looks like outside the cave, you know. It must be a beautiful place, right? This is the absolute sum, right? You get to see it in all its shining brightness, right? But we never get to see it in its shining brightness. We get to see it like this, as another annoying darn number that we could be worried about, right? And Peirce was really, really, really heavily influenced by this. I want to argue that this was formative for him. His work, these pages, that effed him up for life. Like ability, because he always had to account for error, even though all of this is addition. You might think addition is the stupidest thing in the world, right? Addition, just rinse and repeat, you know, add. It's like, no, man. This messed him up big time, because no matter how good his results were and diligent he was, pairwise, add this to that, add this to that, pairwise, at the end of the day, when he all sum it up, there would still be room for errors. And it was his responsibility as a scientist to say the probability of error. And I want to argue that that had a formative influence on his philosophy. And that's where you get him being so different from Descartes. He's a philosopher who really makes room for mistakes in his philosophy. And we saw that here, and we saw that here. Did you like the a priori exercises and this one as well? Did you folks like those two exercises? And I hope they'll stay with you, man. It's like, we're going to come back on this the entire term. Like, we'll meditate on this. These were like mandalas to help us meditate, right? Like a meditation tool. We're going to think back on this and what it means. We often run away, so many philosophers run away from the dirtiness of the world, like astronomy and all the messy measurements of the real world. They go hide in mathematics. They say, oh, mathematics is where I can finally get my certainty. In Peirce, there's no refuge. You can never go to a special place where everything's going to be okay. There's never that place. There's never a place where you can go, everything's going to be certain now. God's going to guarantee perfect certainty. Here, everything is going to be clear. It's like, no, you never get that. And that's a philosophy for actual humans living on Earth, right? And it's as far away from Descartes as you can get. And we'll explore that over the next few weeks, right? Even in math offers no refuge. Logic offers no refuge, right? And so the three keystone ideas now that I want to take away from this entire class. Are you good to go for the three keystone ideas? That's going to be the last thing we do. We're doing perfect on time. I'm going to tell you the three keystone ideas. Tell me good to go. Yeah, you can run, but you can't hide from Peirce. That's right. That's right. Because I think he got it right, folks. I think in that regard, his philosophy is correct, right? Yeah. There's also some similarities. We'll explore those, Andrew, right? We can meditate on that. We can think about that. I'm going to do less comparative work, but they're certainly not all dissimilar. Yeah. But the question is, so Andrew writes, doesn't this match up with Descartes? Whereas both philosophers observe they could be wrong. True, they could be wrong, but then what is the response to that? Descartes' response is, if I can be wrong, then I am wrong. Peirce's solution is, if I can be wrong, it just means I can be wrong. I could still be right, right? So yeah, that's a big difference. Descartes' like, if I can doubt it just a bit, ditch it. I mean, that's the meditations. If I can doubt it just a little bit, forget about it. But how could you possibly doubt, René, that you're wearing shoes? It's like, no, I can doubt it a little bit. Therefore, I should doubt it across the board. In Peirce, you don't get that. You could be wrong, but then what? And their response to that is really different, right? Here's the keystone ideas. This, by the way, is the keystone, right? That's the stone that holds all the other stones together. If you remove that, everything falls apart. I think there are three keystone ideas in Peirce. Fallibilism. Fallibilism is the technical word for the ability to fail, the ability to make errors. Fallibilism is this idea, this openness to the constant possibility of making mistakes. If any of you have taken courses with me, you'll see how open I am to the possibility of making mistakes, both you and me. No one can escape from that predicament. To be human is to err. You'll have that literally in your reading this week. So fallibilism is the possibility of making mistakes. Community of inquiry. Well, since we are making mistakes, the best we can do is get together and not make the same mistakes. Your mistakes aren't the same as my mistakes. And if we all get together and we aim at the reality, if we aim at that star called reality, right? And we keep at it long enough, and we devise better and better instruments, and we refine our observations, and we're honest, and a lot of us participate over a long time, then we could approximate something that looks like the truth. We do less and less errors, and approximate is all I'm saying here. We don't necessarily reach, but we tend towards, and the only way to tend towards is by doing it together, right? In the Meditations on First Philosophy, Descartes sits by the fireplace, all alone, and he's going to figure it all out on his own. He sits back in his chair, and he starts thinking, and he tells us what he's thinking, and he spins the whole world out of, I think, therefore I am, right? In Peirce, you get something really different, and it involves other people. And look, I've got you involved. Right? And finally, meaning as interpretability. The reason why Peirce started writing all of his manuscripts, even though none of them were being published, is because he had a theory of science that said that to mean something is precisely to stand open to being interpreted. And he knew that although those were just marks on paper, those marks on paper stood the possibility of being decoded and interpreted by future humans. And he wasn't concerned with whether or not they were decoded within his lifetime. He'd given up on that. But his theory of meaning is that to be a sign is precisely to be understood in the future. Like it's potentially open to being interpreted over and over again. And so that's what gave him fuel to write all of his manuscripts, even though no one was reading them. I'm going to show you the first lines of our Peirce packet. This is the first Peirce packet that's going to be available in 3 minutes as soon as the class is over. And it starts, I've written the title for the section, Peirce knew that these signs would be interpreted. So he'd like to introduce himself to you. Yes, you Andrew, you Nav, you Oscar. Let me make the acquaintance of my reader and express my sincere esteem for him and the deep pleasure it is to me to address one so wise and so patient. He's speaking to you from beyond the grave. I know his character pretty well, for both the subject and the style of this book ensure his being one out of millions, and you are quite literally one out of millions. The person reading this will comprehend that this book has not been written for the purpose of confirming the reader in his preconceived opinions, and he would not take the trouble to read it if it had. He is prepared to meet with propositions that he is inclined at first to dissent from, and he looks to being convinced that some of them are true after all. This, my friends, is Peirce talking to you. Just to give you a sense, this is Collected Papers, Volume 1, Paragraph 2. So for each one of these reconstructed texts, I'll tell you where I got it from. I've broken them down into something that's very readable, and I've pre-highlighted it for you. That is the Peirce packet number 1, right? Page 2, page 3, and I've kept them nice and short, and this is your reading for this week. My friends, according to Peirce's semiotic, according to his philosophy of signs, he literally has just spoken to you. Now, what's your homework? You write, you proof, and you submit your first entry. The first entry is following the template, and you got to give me that within 7 days, all right? So sometime before the next class. Next week, what do? Peirce's non-Cartesian epistemology, part 1. We start exploring his thought. My friends, is everything crystal clear about what you're expected to do, or do you have any further questions? If you have any further questions, type them. If it's crystal clear, say crystal clear. And please ask if you have a question, right? Good. And also, I can't tell because I can't read your body language. How are your emotions? How did you enjoy today's first class? How are you feeling about this course? Where are you at right now emotionally? How are you feeling? Good. Because I'm trying to pass on how much I love this, right? I mean, I love Peirce, and this is a labor of love. This is the gravy. Like getting to teach the stuff you love the most. It's like, this is it. So keep bringing it. What we do is we meet again next week. You know what you got to do. On that note, my friends, let's say an individual goodbye. And if you need to talk to me, I'll stick around. But other than that, let's say our individual goodbyes. I had a great time with you. So long, Andrew. Bye-bye, baby bear. Bye, Ariana. Oscar, goodbye. John, take care. Goodbye, everyone. Ritu, see ya. See you next week, Sonia. Arjun, it was nice to meet you. Sumdish, take care. Nav, yeah, we'll enjoy the sun. I totally will. Stephen, take care. Owen, goodbye. Alan, goodbye. Julia, what a joy to have you again, huh? We're going for number 3. Hannah, we're going for like number 4 now, I think, something like that. Kai, thank you for being such a good sport. You did really well. Thanks for everyone, huh? These experiments couldn't have worked without you. Like I can't teach this stuff alone. Yeah, amazing. And it's your ability to make mistakes in public that makes us grow, right? You put your stuff out there, we create a space, and we experiment, and we learn from that. That's what we do. All right, my friends, this was an amazing first class. I really look forward to teaching this course throughout the semester. I look forward to seeing you next week. Do your readings and take care. Enjoy life and browse through the website if you're curious. All right, ciao.